I wanted to watch this video by Max Fisher. So he had a video that came out earlier about China that went kind of viral, but there's a new one that came out today. So he had this one called China Quietly Saved the World last month. And it was basically about how China has cut oil imports in response to the Iran war, which has helped maintain oil prices from going absolutely crazy temporarily, you know? The problem is China's reserves are private. You can't see what they have, and we're draining all our reserves. So I wouldn't say the world is saved, but they saved the world last month. But what I've learned about China, let's see.
There is one country that if you are interested in the world or really interested in any topic at all, comes up over and over again.
China.
China.
Okay, we were on this wave. I'm telling you, that's why I started What's Up Beijing in like 2021 or 2. The country of the 2020s is China, in terms of not like pure up and to the right guaranteed, more of like, it is just the story. China's decisions are having world ramifications. It's just important. It's the country to watch this decade because they are finally throwing some muscle around. Jump in.
Amir Ali asks, does China actually want to replace the United States as number one, or does it just want the US to get out of its neighborhood? This is I think, maybe surprisingly simple answer, which is no. They absolutely do not want to replace the United States in the number one spot in the world.
What is this guy's qualifications for making this so? I'm not saying it's like their ultimate driving goal, but by mere act of wanting to grow lines up into the right, you are in essence wanting to be number one. What does that mean?
The thing is they understand that the United States as number one plays this role as the guarantor of global free trade and prosperity and upholding the wealth and the size of the middle class of the Western world and the developed and democratic world. And China knows that they need that and rely on that because their economy is built on exporting stuff to not just those countries, but mainly those countries. It's built on relying on that free trade.
What does he mean by number one then? This is a terrible start to this video. because let me just tell you, I'm going to be fucking purely honest here. China would like to be number one in like a million different things. They want to be number one in patents. They want to be number one in exports. They want to be number one in, they want their military to be number one. They want number one in controlled minerals. They want to be number one in, so it's like they want all these things. In fact, I can't think of any field that US is number one in that they wouldn't want to be. They want to be number one in education. They want to have the university system that the US has so people come to their universities. They want to be number one in soft power and in hard power. It's like it's an interesting way to frame this.
Now they do want, and the questions I think got to this well, they do absolutely want the United States out of their neighborhood. They don't want to be the number one globally, but they want to be number one in their immediate neighborhood. And it's also because they eventually want to, and they're again very clear about this, invade and, depending on your perspective, either conquer or reconquer Taiwan. And they can't do that as long as the United States is number one, not just globally, so in Southeast Asia. So China's endgame is to stay number two, but to be in charge and the big boss in their kind of immediate neighborhood. Great question. We could obviously spend a lot of time on this. I'm giving kind of quick surface level answers because I want to be able to answer all these questions because there's so many great questions.
But that wasn't a good answer at all.
So we're going to mark that first question answered.
That's terrible.
Also, to the USA.
Listen, I got to tell you, because I've read a lot about China. I've also been to China, and I've also spoken to many Chinese people, and I've read books in China. I've read books in America. The truth is that the most hardcore, serious China experts will tell you that answering even a simple question like what China wants is very difficult because China is a massive country with many, it has one unified government, but it has many different sub-factions within it that are all competing for different things. And they all have different priorities and goals. Obviously, Xi Jinping is currently at the head and his goals matter the most, but there's a lot of sub-factions that have their own different goals. And they would say that, reading the tea leaves on what this is can change month to month, week to week, and it's actually kind of hard to follow. So I don't like that he says it with such confidence. It's kind of insane to be like, this is what they want. It's a way of speaking that is frustrating.
Living conditions, education, social life, and overall wealth. How proportional are the economic classes in each country? All of this will reveal which country's way of doing things is truly better in a very summarized and dumbed down way. Emerson, amazing question. This is such a great way to try to understand China by looking at it relative to a country that, whether you live in the United States or not, you know a lot about. China and the United States started in very, very different places, literally whenever you start the clock, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 300 years ago. So the fact that, China has come up in a lot of ways.
He's kind of acting like an AI. Did you just feed these questions into Claude? And then take a cork board?
If you go back to the video we did a couple of months ago on China's demographic crisis, we watched some Chinese soap operas. I thought it was really fun. I really love watching them. They're on Netflix. If you look at those soap operas, which are of like regular middle class lives in China, those look like my life. Like those look almost identical to like the things that I care about, what I do with my week. People with email jobs, they go to the luxury.
Has bro been to China? Or is he watching Chinese soap operas?
If you go to any of the big, like quote unquote tier 1 cities, these are the cities that you have heard of, Beijing, Shanghai. That's what you will see. You will see middle class life. You'll see people going out to like.
Middle class isn't a real thing in communism. There's only capital. I had thought there couldn't be something dumber than this guy's answer. Fango, what the fuck are you talking about? Guys, it's not a crazy different country. They fucking work wage labor jobs at malls. They're not, there's nothing different about it in terms of like day-to-day economic reality life. They're not, I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about. It's not a crazy different country. Yes, their economic life is mostly the same. But what he's saying is not statistically true in that the middle class of China, because it's such a big fucking country, and the majority of the country is not in the developed urban environments where they film those things, middle class of China is pretty poor. So it's not the same as like Australia or fucking Western Europe or America. But if you take the slice of like people in Shanghai, yeah, they have a pretty similar economic life. They work fucking email tech jobs. They pay. The difference is, I think, are like that working hours there are pretty fucking brutal. They're just longer. They have a more brutal schooling system and a more brutal hours worked. But in terms of like their share of the economic pie, that's closer. There's what he just said to some middle class. Yeah, but here's the thing is, the pedantic thing I'm pointing out is that when you say middle class, you're kind of taking the percentage of the whole country and finding sort of what's the middle, right? But what I'm saying is in China, this is more of an upper, it's almost like an elite class of these, localized in these cities that is doing well. It's better because that's where the prosperity and wealth is.
The rich in China are similar to the rich in the United States.
This is true.
In the fact that they are ultra wealthy. There's a huge gap between the rich and everybody else in China, just like in the United States,
in
the sense that they are very powerful and very involved in politics and trying to pull political strings in order to protect and grow their wealth. That level.
I mean, the example he shows of Jack Ma is the worst possible example because Jack Ma got smacked down. It's not really the billionaires that are outside of the party. It's the billionaires that are inside of the party. China has more billionaires in parliament. It's the richest parliament in the world. We have a fucking rich Congress. Those people have more political connections and they're very powerful and they're very wealthy. And that's the different fucking slice of it there. But there's still a massive wealth gap and there's still fucking private company owners who are extremely wealthy. We got that too, Loki? Yeah, we do. High key.
Okay, now let's get into where it's really different. And I think not the biggest difference, but really close, is the working class. The working class, the life for the working class, concerns for the working class in China are very, very different from those in the United States. Life is really tough if you are working class in China. It's very precarious. It's much more kind of like the old China. These jobs are very industrial. Workers in China, despite what you might think, given its, let's say, flag and political system, have very few rights and protections. Genuine labor unions are illegal in China. They're technically...
This is true. It's crazy because the Communist Party in China started out of labor movements, and now labor movements are banned. There's a pretty famous, I mispronounce it. Is it JASIC or JASIC? The 2018 labor movement. This is a pretty important incident. I heard it from people in China. They don't like to talk about it too much, but there was a huge strike because of poor working conditions, low wages, and forced overtime at this technology company in Shenzhen. And they wanted the right to form labor unions, and they were denied. And in fact, all the activists got arrested. So it was like a big moment for the end of labor movements. I think the government will sometimes crack down, but you can't do it as an individual. You can't like start a labor movement. But I mean, we have pretty weak labor unions now.
If you want to know what life is like for the working class in China, do not take it from me. Watch a fantastic Chinese movie made by a Chinese filmmaker named Jia Zhangke called A Touch of Sin. You've probably heard of this movie. You've maybe seen it around It's fantastic. It's really good. It's a series of
Recommending
vignettes
TV
that are
shows
kind
and
of
movies.
reflective of modern life in China, and a lot of them are from the perspective of working class Chinese people and the kind of like hardships and struggles.
But even this is from 2013, so it's like a decade out of date. Like there have been strides since then. So I just feel like this guy's watched a lot of movies. I mean, it is true. We went to these factories though. Some people are working fucking hard ass jobs. They're working hard ass jobs. The hours in China are generally crazy. They're just generally higher than people would tolerate in other countries I've been to or lived in. Not as hard as a streamer, but they are insane hours, both in like the middle class, like the upper middle class tech jobs, and then obviously in the factory jobs. They're pretty bad, that's for sure. And then here's what I'll say. I don't know if he's going to mention this in the video, but the thing that I've been watching in China and definitely saw when I was there is there's just an absolute astronomical amount of gig work. Just a truly stunning amount of gig work. Again, for private tech companies. So people think it's a communist country. If Mark saw the amount of gig workers, I think he would find some flaws in it. But yeah, it's like, I mean, like literally like 300 million. Like it's like a 1-to-1 if every person in America was a gig worker. Everywhere you look, there's someone on a scooter delivering food. It's crazy. It has become I read a great piece recently about how it's become like the shock absorber for unemployment. Because it's been an economic slowdown because of the real estate thing. Unless you're in the three key industries that are fucking killing it, which is batteries, cars, and solar. But there's a lot of gig work. Isn't gig working better when health insurance is in charge of the USA? Yeah, they have a really incredible, comprehensive welfare system there. But I want you to hear this Ezra Klein quote. There's an Ezra Klein quote where he says, if you want prosperity, you can't engage in welfarism. It creates a group of lazy people who get something for nothing. What do you think about that? Is that a counter? Does that change your mind? Okay, good, because that's a Xi Jinping quote. No, they have a really actually pretty bare bones safety net, bro. Yeah. I think you guys don't know about China at all. I swear to God, most people on the internet talks about China is so fucking, they just watch TikTok. They do have, I do say not kidding though. The public hospitals in China are fucking awesome. They are really good. They're extremely well funded. They're nice. The rural ones, my understanding, a lot worse. Maybe not, the quality's okay, but insane wait times. But, I think America's no position to judge on healthcare.
Next, the only remaining class and the one that is most different from life in the United States or a lot of other countries is China's rural poor. China still has a very large population of people who live in rural poverty. And by poverty, there's different standards for it, but generally means under $10 a day. So, when we say poverty, we really mean it. And this looks like what you would imagine. It's not modern housing. Typically, running water might be an issue. Basic amenities are an issue. And again, I'm not bringing this up to knock China, because one of China's greatest successes, and maybe one of the greatest successes in human history, is how much of the rural poor China has lifted out of poverty into the working class and even the middle class in one generation, which is amazing. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions of people who were lifted out of rural poor villages into skyscrapers, which is awesome. China is very proud of this accomplishment. Amazing question. My favorite question I've maybe ever gotten. Marking and answered, and thank you, Emerson.
Dude, why is this guy glazing every question so hard?
Okay, question number 4 from Lily Guerrero. Should people worry more about China than the U.S. in terms of militarism and spying? Also, is China on its way to really becoming a green country? So, Lily, we're going to answer the first one first. Should people worry more about China than the U.S. in terms of militarism and spying? And I will say that countries on China's periphery that border China treat it as far and away the bigger threat. They treat...
it's like Carney's speech, bro. It's like the middle powers of the world are kind of frustrated with both. But I would say Xi Jinping, at the very least, has proven to be a stable actor. Even if he's acting primarily in a win-lose way towards other countries on trade and to China's benefit, which is what a leader, I guess, should do. But it's like they are threatened by that because it is slowly but surely undermining the sources of their prosperity, especially for a European manufacturing export. But in terms of militarism, of course Trump is the bigger threat. He's been fucking chaotic. And then he's also throwing around insane fucking trade wars. There's just no comparison. I'm poking holes in some of the more egregious China glaze or whatever. But like, just to be real, and if we're in the 2026 right now and you're a country, Trump is just not only a threat, like you can't trust him on anything. There's no stability. His plans fluctuate month to month, and any deal he makes, he walks back the second it's not in his interest.
Great powers do bad things. They also will sometimes be really helpful to smaller countries. It's not because they are so virtuous and kind, but because every country acts in its interests as it perceives them. Chinese foreign policy
this is all
tends to be
countries
very bullying in its neighborhood.
Since the dawn of time. I don't think that great powers act too much out of their own interests in all of human history. And it's all mostly, whatever they say, it's like their actions all end up doing that. But what I would say is like, that's why I think Trump is so uniquely bad. I really think, because I think he's stupid. I think he's not just, selfish or whatever, or trying. I think he's uniquely stupid, and it's causing, like, he's not even stable or the capability of working in his own interests in like simple win-win ways that would benefit him and the country. It really just benefits him personally.
Make of that what you will in terms of which country is a more responsible steward of the global order. Great question, marking it answered. Okay, Lily's other question that she snuck in, is China on its way to really becoming a green country? This one comes up all the time because we hear so much about China's wind farms, its green tech, its electric vehicles.
So it's interesting because they are, making the most solar and the most wind, but they're also making the most coal and the most nuclear. They're making the most everything. They just don't care. If you look at the numbers on China, it doesn't seem like they truly care about anything green. It's more of that they care about having the most energy possible. And it's going to work out to be, I guess, greener. But it's also weird because it's not like the emissions are going down. It's like, it's just I don't know. It's tough. They just want to win. They want to have more energy, which, by the way, on the whole, I think is better than the alternative. And it does give you, as a country, energy independence, which is really important, as Japan can attest to right now, as the Iran war has made their country very fucking precarious energy-wise.
China's development of green energy and green tech like electric cars is not primarily because they care about climate change. It's because they care about energy security. They have been
I'd agree with this. This is a good answer.
Bella goes on, I've heard China referred to as socialist, communist, and capitalist. But which ideology are they actually following or most aligned with? Great questions, guys. So I think what all of these are asking is China really communist? Or are they actually capitalist because they claim to be one, but it kind of seems like the other, and it's all very confusing. And I think the honest answer is that neither of these terms is the best way to describe China's system. And there is another word that I think is a much better way to describe their system. I will come back to it, but first let's tack on what
the real word is state capitalism, which is what they're the closest to if you did definition by definition. But I do think I've realized this recently in the big 2-6. These words have lost all meaning to most people. I think I often am pedantic about the way these terms were used during the Cold War. When there was very ideologically driven sides that had very specific ideas on how markets and things function. But those don't apply anymore. I think most people say socialist today, they mean hey, can my government work? Because in the past few decades, it just doesn't work. So I'm softening a bit because I don't believe that the fucking government should seize control of all private enterprise. And on the other side, some people are dumb enough to look at Mamdani in New York and be like, holy fuck, New York has become what Marx always dreamed. It's a socialist hellscape. And it's bro, it's economically almost nothing has changed in New York. He's just fixing the fucking potholes. And you know what I'm saying? But most things he's doing, it's just getting government to do its basic functions. Socialist is such a nebulous term. And what's interesting is, so I actually have read Capital by Marx. It was such a fucking boring read. I swear to God, one of the most overrated books in history. But in that book, he uses socialist and communist interchangeably. You can look this up. It was interchangeably used at the time. And then it's evolved since then. And now some people think of it as an entirely separate system where it's just get more government involvement on certain things. Some people think of it as a stage where it's like a Pokemon, like Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard, where Charmeleon is socialism, but then you're going to get to communism guaranteed. I'm not thinking of Capital by Piketty. I'm thinking of Capital by Marx, but I've also read Capital by Piketty. And so people use all these words in a lot of different ways, right? And so it's tough to unpack. You often can agree on a lot more than you disagree, is what I would say. But I will say, to those whose primary knowledge of China comes from TikTok, I gotta be honest with you, bro. If Karl Marx, who looked out his window in 1800s Britain and saw low-paid factory workers working for private owners, and then it was transported into modern China, he would not be like, oh, thank God my dream has been realized. Okay, it's not, nothing about the economic system there is anything but capitalist. There's private owners of billion-dollar businesses. They pay, people trade their labor in a market for wages. Okay? They pay rent to landlords. It's not functionally different. There's a big wealth gap driven by private enterprise. Sometimes they take the taxpayer money and they build trains, which is things we've done in capitalist countries as well. Like fucking America in different decades. So I would say the closest name for it is state capitalism, because they do have state control of some key industries. And they are very active in telling certain companies what they can and can't do. But also, you need to understand that if you are a billionaire outside of the party, people talk about how they're more aggressive towards billionaires. It's like somewhat true, but the billionaires, as they always do, have adapted to this. And the billionaires are now in the party. Do you understand? Billionaires are very good at staying billionaires, and they have different systems in different countries, but they always know how to fucking adapt. And they've adapted by becoming part of the system. I think Marx would see an iPhone and realize capitalism is when iPhone. Yeah, I think he would. I think Karl Marx would fucking take up doom scrolling, bro. I think he would start fucking scrolling. I think you get him on short form video, he'd be cooked. I've heard it described that capital controls the state in America and the state controls capital in China. Yeah, but it's okay. Here's what I'm trying to make you understand, bro. I'm trying to make you understand, because I really should draw this, okay? What you really want in, like, when places are really fucking working, imagine you have these different groups, okay? You got capital, you got the state, you got the government, and ideally, you also have, like, labor, you have, like, regular people. You want all these circles to actually be of similar strength so they can check and balance each other. That's the dream when things are functioning, because that sort of gives you an out. But sometimes you guys are like, hey, this is labor. You're like, hey, I'm getting real sick of this capital. They're too strong. And maybe they are. I think they are right now. I think it's too stacked in their favor in America. And so, rather than something like increasing the power of labor with like labor unions that acts as a check, you're like, hey, why don't the state seize this? But then what happens functionally is this ceases to exist and this becomes massive. And they have the same power imbalance. And the people that control, you call it the choke points of the economy, still use them to abuse you. That's just how it works. So you really just want things that make these ability to check each other. Like labor, power over state with democracy, power over capital with unions. These are some of the best things when they work. Neither of them work really well in America right now, but that's what you'd want. Why not labor massive and capital not exist? Yeah, so this is Marx's dream, right? That both of these don't exist. But in practice, the problem is that labor in this circle is very harmonious, but in practice, because this group is so much population-wise bigger than the other two, because this is billions of people, millions of people, they can't organize very effectively, okay? And they have multiple competing interests that diverge. So while that would be a nice dream, in practice, when, like for example, in Capital, Marx describes that once the state has seized all economic activity, it will naturally wither away. And then everyone will be in a stateless, classless society. That's what he thought would happen. But in practice, when this happened, the state only got more entrenched. They got stronger. They, in fact, did a lot of things to entrench that power among the elite of the group. And so this is just the way it goes. This is what humans play. This is how humans play no matter what economic system they're in. It's not a capitalism, communism, socialism thing. It's a fucking human thing. If you go before all these terms were invented and you go back to fucking feudalism or ancient Rome, this is how people play no matter what, okay? They try to fucking work in their own interests and entrench power they've gained. They don't give it up. So my worldview on it is that the way things work the best is when that no thing has enormous power over the other. I think the thing I hate the most is bigness. I'm an anti-monopoly guy. I love business, but only when it's small and medium. I hate gigantic business. I hate gigantic state. Anything that's too big, which is weird for big A, except for A. The more competing things there are of a small size, usually the better it works out for you as an individual person. No one can abuse you that hard because there's some other options. It's the curse of bigness. I think when human group things or intrinsic of power get too big, they will abuse it, guaranteed. That's what I would say.
China has always said that they are breaking with communism as it has kind of always been defined and described outside of China. They've always said that they are doing communism with Chinese characteristics. That is their phrase for it. Actually, just to super quickly define communism, its main two features, I would say, to super oversimplify, are one, a centrally planned economy. So that means everything from production, how much is produced, who works on what, all of which is meant to build towards a end state of total equality. And the second piece of it is something called Leninism, named after, of course, Lenin, the founder of the Soviet Union. What Leninism means is a super strong party, a communist party that controls every aspect of life in the country, that is meant to bring about this gradual revolution.
Well, I want to answer this question too, because this is a great question. I feel like capital will always corrode the institutions that regulate it by the same transfer of power and then collude to destroy labor. Here's what you have to understand. This is my grand theory here, okay? This happens not to capital, not to the state, not to the labor, to everyone. This happens to everyone. Every human institution, every group of humans has entropy, and it will always decay and become more inefficient and corrupt over time. Always. It's no matter what economic system you look at. Of all human societies, okay? This has all happened. I mentioned this before, but if you were to start a fucking D&D group with your friends and you all have passion for it and you're excited, over time, people's schedules start to get misaligned. People stop showing up. It starts a little later. It starts degrading. The only way to stop this is through human effort. There is no system you can create. There's no rules you can write down. There's nothing you can do that stops the need for that effort to rejuvenate and renew. Without that, people will solve the meta in their own interests. Okay? And I want to use an example of bigness. Like, we all know examples of like when the state gets too powerful and the abuses that can cause. And we know when capital gets too powerful and the abuses they can cause. But even like at the peak power of labor movements in America, okay? There have been abuses there. Police labor movements that have gotten extremely powerful have abused that power. But massive labor movements in America in the peak of labor movements in like the 40s, 50s, 60s, they became entrenched with the mob, okay? And they used the power they had over workers to basically steal their pensions and use them to fucking fund Vegas. There was Jimmy Hoffa. Anytime a group or organization gets powerful enough, they will abuse that power. You want that to exist. Some people look at that and they go, there should be no unions. No, there should be unions, but it's going to take human effort to regulate, and it's going to take a balance. There's got to be a balance. I'm saying there's got to be a balance. That things will expand until they reach a conflict. Right now, we're in a fucking lull, a weak point for unions. We want them to be stronger. But at max strength in America, when like 1/3 of the country was in a union, there was abuses there. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be. I'm trying to break you out of the simplification mindset of like, if we just do this, it's solved. I'm sorry, this is nothing. Nobody has done that in human history. Human beings inherently have this weakness in our brains. So we're trying to do smart things and get towards as close to balance as we can, and then work at it. And then keep smart people making decisions.
But what there's a lot more of is capitalism. And I think we all know about this. They're very about trade, private enterprise, startups, companies competing in the free market, people getting richer or poorer. Deng Xiaoping, who is the second leader.
Kind of a goat. He did introduce new economic zones that basically got rid of all the previous rules under Mao, economic rules. And then a bunch of private enterprises started and they were fucking successful, made a bunch of money for China, and then made China way, way wealthier and brought a lot of people out of poverty. It's true. It's a fact. It works. That being said, it's interesting you mentioned central planning, because I think one thing China does very well is they use, I've heard it described as capitalism in a bird cage. And I like that. I like that idea. And what is effective about it. Like, for example, the central planning of Russia was a colossal failure. It's just you can't keep up with the actual demands. It's impossible to be informed enough. Prices act as signals that allow you to make good decisions. And the idea that you can figure it all out doesn't work. But like if they have a broader goal, like let's say they want to increase, I don't know, let's say robots or chip making in China. What they do is they provide these like financial incentives, and then rather than give them to one particular company or one particular winner that they've chosen, they sort of provide it out to the market. And it's like, if you win, you get these. And so they leverage the power of private competition, of many, many players trying to win. Like the Chinese EV competition is so brutal. It's insane, but they have used state incentives to make it like, if you get to this finish line, if you win this race, you're going to be a very, very wealthy man. You're going to do quite well. And that's a smart way to play. It's a smarter way to play it than I think even our government is almost more centrally planned in that we'll like pick a single company and give them a massive government contract and try to have them do it all, which doesn't work.
You could actually make the case he's one of the maybe 3 most important world leaders at all of the last 100 years. Absolutely fascinating
100%.
guy. Deng Xiaoping has this quote about like, are we capitalist? Are we communist? Where he said, it doesn't matter if the cat is black or white as long as it catches mice. And what that means is like, who cares if we call it capitalist or communist, as long as the system works at doing what we want it to do. And he's like, that has really carried the way for China ever since. Question number 7, Shamsuddin Ismail V asks, will the emergence of China as a world superpower set the blueprint for modern communism? Will more countries, seeing the success of this communist nation, be motivated to turn communist, and will China give them that support against the US as the USSR did during the Cold War? And this, again, it's a great question because if you know anything about the Cold War, of course you would expect that is China going to do the same thing that the Soviet Union tried to do?
I mean, it's not really a good question. First of all, China's, as we've said, not communist by definition. But in China, unlike like the Soviet Union, has no real interest in supporting the global revolution. They're not out there like trying to fund other communist projects. They are concerned with China. They are concerned almost entirely in their actions with growing the wealth, resources, and power of China, which they're doing very successfully. They don't. Every other country to them in their foreign policy seems to be a means to an end. They don't really treat anyone as a real close ally. Like nobody. Everybody's kind of like arm's length, and it's what can you do for me? So yeah, that's how they run it. They run it that way.
Soviet Union had what's called a universalist political system or a universalist ideology, which means that they believed that their political system was the pinnacle of human political achievement, and therefore it was their duty and their responsibility and their right to spread that system to the entire world. And the United States believed the exact same thing and still believes that about their system, about democratic capitalism. So you can see why they fought a Cold War. But China not only doesn't want this,
but I don't think under Trump, I don't think he believes that either. I think the whole world has become a lot less ideological, to be honest. The world has become way less ideological and way more real hard resources, real hard money, real hard borders, real hard transactional. It's very transactional political environment right now for almost all countries. They don't really care how it's done. They just want more. It's 1800s. It is. It's way more like mercantilism. It's very mercantilist, which is an interesting time.
One of China's closest allies in Asia is Pakistan, which is a like Islamic.
Why is that different than any other country? Is there a country that gives anything away for free? Well, what he's referring to, what I'm talking about, is that during the era of like the Cold War, there was such a ideological rift that a whole lot of money and aid and time was spent by both parties, USSR and America, to many, many countries to like sway them one side or another ideologically. Whereas now that wouldn't matter. It would be more about what that country can give you in terms of resources. Amazing question though. Love you that question. I personally love you for that question. That question was brilliant. It changed my life. And thank you for saying it.
For them, it's really just all about like, you guys do whatever you want politically. We just want to find countries that we can like work with in a way that will work for us.
They want to make money, bro.
The other aspect of your question is like, are other countries trying to copy China? Which is obviously very different than whether China wants to spread their system. And the answer is sort of, but mostly not. A lot of countries look at China's obvious successes over the last 50, 60, 70 years, and they look for pieces to copy. Ethiopia is a country that looked at China's political and economic.
I mean, Vietnam's copying a lot of it quite successfully. Vietnam did the Deng Xiaoping. They're called like the, I'm going to mispronounce the shit out of it, but it's like the Dao Mao or the Doi Moi or something. The Accords, where they basically said, hey, our fucking economic system is not working. We're going to fucking open this shit up to private business. And they went fucking crazy. They started making a lot of money. And they started getting factories open there. And they started buying blue jeans and getting rich, bro. And now it's working. And now actually some of the, a lot of factories initially moved to China because they had lower wages. But now China has higher wages. Not insanely high, but higher than world average for factories. And they maintain a lot of that because they have good infrastructure. So people don't want to go elsewhere. But some of the cheaper stuff is moving to Vietnam in the same way that it first moved to China. Vietnam's one of the 5 communist countries. Yeah, but again, like I'm saying, like in terms of like the actual classic communism, Vietnam is not communist. The closest example we've gotten in real life is like when Lenin first took control and they instituted war communism. That's the closest they've gotten to actually Marx. And they were like literally like money's gone. State pure control of all economic activity. There's nothing close to that. Not even close to that. We're not even 1 million miles from that in any country right now. And what they essentially become is state capitalists, where they have private businesses and most people make their money by trading on a wage labor market. But they just keep the state control of some key industries and they set some broad directions. That's the truth of Vietnam and China, all them. And that's bad? It's not bad or good. What I'm saying is, listen, here's the sad truth of if you study economic systems in countries, you end up realizing that the closest we've gotten to like a pretty good overall system for most people is the Nordics, okay? It comes back to them like every time. I just want you to know that like a private capital system, but with high taxes so that you don't pick a winner and they spend, like that is the closest we've gotten. They have strong unions and they have multiple parties. So you have like these levers over both the state and capital as a private citizen. Is wealth important? Try being in a country that isn't wealthy. And then you have a conflict with a country that is wealthy in any time in human history and ask if wealth is important. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just like you can't as a country be like, you know what? We're good here. We'll stop. Inevitably, you will face mad consequences for that. This happens over and over. Okay. Hell, this Chinese century of humiliation was all about that. You can't fall behind in economic development and prosperity and technology. And so the U.S. is the best country in the world. That's not what I'm saying at all, bro. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I also I think the psychological underpinning of the rise in people saying, because there's a lot of people right now who literally have the idea that China is perfect. And I think it's more of like, they're not actually planning to move to China and start working 996 at a factory. This idea of a fictional China is important because it expresses what they feel about their country right now when they're in America. They're angry. They're angry at our current system and they're mad. And like this ideal is almost like their way of expressing it. This country they talk about that doesn't really exist is like how they are expressing their discontent, which I think is fair and warranted. We're in a fucking bad spot. But it just, it's just not real. It's like the people there are having their own problems.
Great question. One country that has found a very specific aspect of the Chinese experience that they are working very hard to mimic is North Korea. We talked about this in our North Korea video. The thing that North Korea is trying to copy from China is not their economic system, definitely not their economic opening or their political system, which is very different, but their foreign policy. And North Korea really sees itself as being a miniature China in what China did in the 1970s in terms of like standing up to the United States, using nuclear weapons in order to then reach a grand bargain with it and to have like friendlier relations with it. Great question. Thank you, Shamsuddin.
Yeah, North Korea's actually had a bunch of economic growth lately. You know that the iconic photo of looking at North Korea and South Korea and there's no lights on in the north? There's starting to be lights on, bro. They've been growing. But, you know, it's like essentially their proximity and closeness to China, the world's exporter, is just helping them a lot. Like, China's just sending them a lot of tech and stuff. It is happening, 100%.
Why does a certain portion of the British and presumably more broadly Western leftists idealize China so much, ignoring its authoritarianism
I already
and
answered this
abysmal
question.
human rights record, despite holding other states to account?
I already
And the
answered
second
this question,
is, how does
bro.
China get things built so quickly? Okay, so again, I'm going to take these questions one by one. You might notice I did not actually put the first question up on the board, and that's because I didn't want people to see it and then fast forward to it to try to like check whether I'm give an answer that is ideologically in line with their beliefs, because I want to kind of try to
Okay, I do sympathize with this guy because it is a fucking reality of talking about real shit on the internet. There's people that fucking do that. It is fucking annoying as hell, bro. People that are just like, it's like thought skimming for a trigger word. They don't know what you're saying and they can't follow along. So they're thought skimming for a word they recognize to whether they can be angry or mad at you. It is a little frustrating. Dude, wait, I'm going off on everything today. I was talking about Israel in a video that's from like a month ago that has 500,000 views, but someone clipped it and they cut off the end. It was me talking very fucking reasonably. And in fact, I think to glaze myself rather impressively using facts, figures, and data about relatively power scaling where our money goes. And I was 100% correct, by the way. But I was saying how, you know, we spend way, way, way more. Like, here's the thing that annoys me, right? It's basically about a response to like, if you're like, hey man, let's figure out universal healthcare, but it is gonna be really expensive and I'm worried about our national debt, so we need to like make some more concessions. People go, oh, we just stopped sending money to Israel and we could pay for it. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? The amount we send to Israel is like 0.00001%. If you took all time money from Israel since the 70s and added that all up, it wouldn't equal 1% of 1 year's healthcare spending. So it's like I was pushing back on that, but I still said at the end of the clip, I was like, listen, we should stop sending money to Israel just for purely like fucking almost PR reasons. Like, it's just bad. Like, they're just using it for bad reasons. Whether or not it's a small amount, it's not a point. But they cut the fucking end. They cut the fucking end and they put it like, I'm Netanyahu's strongest soldier, bro. That's not what... It's annoying. But then also, after I saw that clip, I was thinking about it, bro. And I was like, this is, you know how like, this is probably gonna get clipped insane, but this is just a true fact. I was thinking about good politicians. And I was thinking about how, you know how Mamdani, when he was like running for office, was like, I'm gonna arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. And I always thought that was kind of corny because it's like, bro, you're a mayor. What are you talking about? And then when he got into fucking office, he did this video where he's like, hey, I checked it and I actually can't arrest him. Like, I don't have the legal authority. But he didn't frame the video like that. Do you have the video? If you watch the video, it's him saying, hey, I checked it and I can't actually arrest him. But he did it. Instead, he titled the video, Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal. And he opens like this. And so what I realized is, it doesn't matter what like the actual actions are. You can just you're just vibe checking, right? And so what I'm telling you is this. If Benjamin Netanyahu appears on my stream, I will arrest him. I'm more of an economics focused streamer, okay? And I want to focus more on economics focused content and what we're fixing. But if Netanyahu ever comes on the Big A stream, he will be arrested. Citizen's arrest. You have my solemn vow. I'm figuring out how to fucking play the game, dude. It's like, of course I don't support what's happening in Gaza. It's like, of course, bro. It's fucking basic obvious.
Why do some people hold up China as an ideal despite China doing things that they criticize in other countries and that would seem to contradict their case that China is the ideal? And there is actually a name for this. It's called campism. People who do this are called campus. This emerged during the Cold War, and it's called campism because it's a way of approaching the world by dividing into two camps, you know, the West and the East, the capitalists, the communists, whatever it is.
Everybody's a campus, bro. You spend enough time on the internet, you realize that everybody gives a little more leniency when it's their guy or their person, and everyone is a little more critical when it's the someone else's, and everyone fucking does it, and they're all have different explanations for it, and they all fucking explain why it's so different this time, but it's true. People do this all the time. This is the way it is. This is the way humans are, and we all get mad at other people for doing it, but then we do it ourselves. Let's see how China gets things built so quickly.
People ask this all the time, very curious about it. People see China building these wind farms and solar panel farms and high-speed trains. And I think what's behind this question is looking at that and asking, why can't we have that? And there are a couple answers to this.
It's a great question. By the way, this is the thing I think is best about China. I think it's the thing we should most try to emulate. I think it is one of their killer advantages. They are very direct and focused on building things. It is incredible. And it's not like we never had this, dude. We built the fucking Golden Gate Bridge in like record time, and now we can't do it. Now a bridge takes 14 years. It's insane. It's insane. It's a massive critical failure of the American experiment. We built nationwide highways. We built all these things have gotten so fucking strangled by competing special interests and misused government regulation. Like government regulation that is maybe made for a noble purpose, but then has been misused by our legal system. And woke DEI is the third thing. Yeah. No. And these things are a huge problem. I think there's this broad feeling in America, especially in states with income tax, that you're paying Equinox prices and getting less than 24-hour fitness quality from your government. It's like the best way to say it, all right? They keep giving these taxes to the government, and you don't feel like your fellow citizens are getting better educated. You don't feel like your hospitals are treating you well. You don't feel like your roads are built well. You don't feel like the quality of the government tax expenditures are matching what you're paying.
One is that China just has incredible internal infrastructure, everything from manufacturing to transportation, because that was what they built their economy around. They built their economy around manufacturing and exporting complicated physical products, mechanical products, machines, cars, parts, and that coincidentally is really, really helpful if you want to build trains internally, if you want to build dams internally, if you want to build solar panels. You're kind of already set up for it in a way that other countries that have different economies, like say the United States or any other country, are not. Another, and this gets to China's political system, is total central government control. Central government wants to build a solar panel farm, they do it. It's done. Nobody's going to talk back to them about it, or they could talk back, but it's not going to make any difference. And it's an important thing that I would highlight about this. You only ever hear about them doing this for the solar panel farms and the high-speed trains because those are the things that get highlighted in the viral Instagram, I went to China and it blew my mind. But the thing you don't see on those videos is that for every high-speed train or solar panel farm that the Chinese government puts in with no accountability and no dissent, they are also putting in 10 chemical factories or 10 coal plants. And because there's no accountability, they're very often built with very low or insufficient health or environmental standards, which is a huge issue in China. There are constantly protests in China about this. It is a huge deal that if you are within China, you are like hyper aware of, but doesn't make it outside of China as much. I think it's important to hold that China is both of those things at once. I'm not saying that to invalidate the incredible things that they do, but I'm saying that this is a system like any system where...
Yeah, it's all true. He's hitting everybody with the fucking nuance burger, but it's true of every country, bro. It's true of every country. Except, and this is the fucking fucked up part, broadly, the damn Nordics. That's what I'm saying. That's why they're so fucked, bro. That's why it's so annoying. That's why they're, and I'm not saying it's perfect by any means. I'm just saying they have a little more broadly, it's just tilted more towards the good than the bad, if you look at it on the whole. And that's why they piss me off. That's why we're going to lose Aiden. It's so annoying to me. The Nordics get good governance in exchange for having to live in the worst weather. Bro, I genuinely believe that their shit weather is part of the reason, they were forced to figure out some of the stuff they figured out. I genuinely believe it. I think, something about it makes it fucking forced. It's, so depressing. And pressure makes diamonds. And like they don't have, yeah, like they didn't have tourism. Like they're like, I don't know, they're almost like forced into this egalitarian. And I'm not saying it's perfect there either. Dude, there's a bunch of people, anytime we talk about the Nordics, who will like message us from all these countries and are like, actually, this fucking sucks. But then they describe the thing that sucks, and I'm like, dude, that doesn't sound that bad. Like every time someone from Denmark has messaged me to be like, actually, this part fucking sucks, I'll read it, and I'm like, bro, this is a relatively minor problem. If you think about it. If you think about it like in terms of, yeah, everyone's got problems and everyone's in a fight. That's what I'm saying. Everything is in a constant battle with entropy to get shittier. I don't even say that to be depressing. I'm not depressing about it. To me, it's just the human condition. It's the way it is. The boulder is always kind of rolling downhill, and you have to fucking grit your teeth with other human beings and push it up. Otherwise, it'll slide down. That's just how it is. It's always constantly sliding a little bit downhill. And luckily, human history has been filled with people who are willing to push the boulder, and it's gotten way higher than it was.
Could the yuan, which is China's currency, there he is, there's our boy, could the yuan actually exchange the US dollar in market currency? Is there a possibility? What would happen if it happens? Could there ever be another currency that would take the place of the US dollar and therefore deprive the US of that power? So that's what's behind that question.
I'm saying, could there ever? Not only could there ever, there will be. Because that's how fucking human history works. We haven't solved it. It's not like the US dollar is it. If you look at human history, there's been different reserve currencies all throughout history, and eventually someone moves on. Like, it's going to happen. It's not like the history's over. But I would say, I'm interested in his answer, but I read The Almighty Dollar, 500 Years of the World's Most Powerful Money. Pretty interesting book. It's definitely about the dollar, before it was the American dollar, when it was the Spanish silver dollar, which we named our fucking thing after, which then before that was the German Joachimsthal. That would tell you that it's like asking if there's going to be a social media for sharing photos that's bigger than Instagram. It's kind of like asking that question, where it's like, it doesn't even matter if something comes along that's quote unquote better. It's like, you might hate Instagram, but your friends are on there and other people are on there. And so you can't leave till they leave. The network effects of the dollar are so strong. People hold their money in it. Countries hold their money in it because things are priced in it. Things are priced in it because they hold their money. It's like self-reinforcing. And there's like a huge punishment for being the person to leave that system. If you're the first one to leave. Because you're out of it. So what I'm saying is, like, it's very unlikely in the near term there's going to be any replacement of the dollar as the reserve currency. But what China is trying to do, maybe I'll talk about this, is not really take the yuan or the RMB and be the world's reserve currency. It's that they want to replace the concept of a reserve currency altogether with a neutral reserve asset like gold, and then have currencies trade against that, and that be the balance setter. And that's more realistic. It's I think that's more, it's certainly their obvious goal. Like, if you look at their actual actions, how they're setting up gold clearinghouses in Europe and in the Middle East, it's like very obvious that's their goal. But whether it happens in any near-term thing is kind of depends on the US and how dumb they are with the dollar, which based on Trump could be very dumb.
But the answer to this question, again, is very simple. No, absolutely not. And the reason is that China does not want this to happen. China does not want the yuan to replace the United States dollar. And in order to turn your currency into a global reserve currency like the US dollar is, there is a bunch of stuff you have to do very deliberately that China is absolutely not willing to do. Things like you have to run a permanent trade deficit. That means you import more than you export.
Not if you do the gold system.
The last question from Kareem.
Last question.
WB. Why is China considered an adversary of the United States? And Kareem goes on with lots of explanations about why this is weird. It makes lots of great points about how it's kind of weird that they're considered adversary. For example, they are each other's largest trading partners by far, and that typically leads to very friendly relations because those countries rely on each other. They are economically integrated. So
a little thing called Thucydides' trap, okay? Anytime in human history there's been a great power and then a rising power destined to replace it or displace it, it has led to conflict. All but 4 times out of 30? 4 times out of 30.
Thucydides' trap has led to conflict. And it just kind of stands to reason, bro. If US was able to dictate certain terms and now they can't, they're going to be upset. And if China feels constrained as it gets bigger and bigger, they're going to be upset. And they both want what all human fucking great powers want, which is more fucking power.
There are lots of things about this relationship that make it seem strange that they would become adversaries, or make you ask, like, is that even the right word to use to describe them? And the thing is, I don't think that it is. I mean, there are certain ways that it is, but I think if you look at it in totality, that's not the best way to describe them. Like, look at how often the leaders of these two countries meet. Look at how often they have summits. Look at the range of things that they talk about. They talk about trade, they talk about tourism. They're constantly.
What the fuck are you guys talking? They are adversaries. They are adversaries, bro. Could we be real? Like, they are. It doesn't matter that Trump and Xi shook hands a couple of times and talked. They're adversaries. China refers to them as adversaries. America refers to them as adversaries. They are constantly watching each other. Their military apparatuses study each other. They're adversaries. It just is what it is.
The thing that I think makes this complicated and makes adversary both neither the right nor wrong word to use to describe them, there's not really a word to use to describe this relationship, is that they simultaneously have all of these points of cooperation that they are constantly managing. They have all of this trade. Their economies are absolutely interlinked.
This is like just not true. Like, this is actually a disingenuous answer to the question. Both China and America have been interlinked economically over decades of previous administrations, but they're both like rapidly trying as best they can, and China's probably doing a better job of this, to disentangle themselves. Like, both of them are making their best effort government-wise, obviously economically in private industry, it's like they're very intertwined, but they're trying to reduce reliance on each other, reduce the impact, and preparing for a world where the other side could cut off key choke points. Whether it's America being able to blockade the Strait of Malacca and cut off Chinese access to oil. China's fucking rushing towards that. Or China being able to cut off access to rare earth minerals, and America's rushing like hell to try and build a rare earth supply chain outside of China. Like, they're both trying to disentangle each other. They're not like friends who are like, well, we rely on each other and that's the way it is. They're both like basically racing headfirst towards a world where there might be possibly conflict. But unfortunately, I just am not impressed by the Trump tactics. In doing this, they seem very short-sighted and poorly thought out. Maybe they're both tsundere. Maybe. There's a famous book from before World War I that fallaciously argued that international war was not possible or rational as a result of supply chains. Yeah, it's silly. It's silly because right now, Russia's closest ally is China. Russia is in an open war with Ukraine, whose closest ally is NATO. Okay? It's like we're only one step removed. It is a conflict. And like, Iran is in an open war with America, and Iran is getting equipment and money from China. And sometimes possibly fucking satellite data and training, or at least that through. There's like proxy wars happening right now. So they're quite certainly adversaries. It's a proxy World War III.
Nuclear war with the United
Excellent
States.
question, by the way.
That's
Excellent
like
question.
one of the main reasons that it exists. Like, they are.
How long was
both
this video?
constant-
I don't know, but it definitely sprung a lot of things I just wanted to talk about. This video was like a good launching point. I didn't really like this video, if I'm being honest. Like, it's okay. It's fine. But it's like, it just made me want to talk about a lot of things, so I kept going. It's like a good launching
the gaming
point.
out. The
And we're almost about
possibilities
to end it, okay?
of war? I don't know. There are ways that the U.S. and China, narrow ways that they are closer than the U.S. is closer than a lot of its actual allies. And they know they need each other. I think bottom line, they know that even more important to them than any mutual threat is the mutual need that they have from one another. So it is a fast.
He's describing toxic Yowie. I mean, I do somewhat agree with that, especially under the Trump administration, because he's treated our fucking longtime European allies so poorly. And it's one of my frustrating aspects of this administration, is that there's just no reason to do that. In fact, it's like the thing I talk about all the time, but like, my fucking God, dude. It would never be an easier time to have like a united front against some of China's practices on trade than right now with Europe, because Europe is getting their fucking clock cleaned by China's manufacturing. It's like hollowing out a ton of European manufacturing. And instead, he's like pissed them all off. They're like more focusing on him invading Greenland while it happens. It's crazy. It's insane that this could have been the ultimate opportunity. I think like Obama would have handled this easy. I'm not even the world's biggest Obama fan, but he would have got them in a fucking trading block in 2 seconds. It's so stupid.
Okay, we did it. 10 questions. We got through a lot. I feel like we kind of have a podcast together. Like
I certainly do. I certainly feel like that because I did some yapping on this one. Thanks for the video, Max Fisher. At the end of the day, it did provoke a lot of discussion, and I agree with most of your answers, to be honest. I wish I had just talked about those things, though. I don't know why we did it